Good morning and welcome everyone to this meeting of the Planning Committee taking place from the Walton Suite in the Winchester Guildhall. It's Wednesday the 18th of October 2023 and the time is 9:30 a.m. My name is Councillor Jane Rutter and I am Chair of the Planning Committee. Around the table we have the other elected members of the committee and we are supported today by a number of officers, Lorna Hutchinson, Simon Avery from the planning team, Daniel Lucas, our legal advisor, our case officers who will sit there which change with each item, and Claire Buchanan from Democratic Services who supports the committee and operates the recording equipment. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded to the Council's YouTube channel. Subtitles are available and advice on how to turn these on is set out on our website. Please can I remind everyone to ensure that your mobile phones are set to silent and any other electronic devices are on silent or preferably turned off entirely. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Please look at the handout provided on your chairs or on the information slides displayed as you walked in and during the breaks for further guidance about this meeting. To ensure the smooth running of the meeting, I ask that nobody calls out from the back of the room during the proceedings. In accordance with the public speaking protocols of the meeting, those who have registered to speak will be able to address the meeting for their allotted time. If there is any disruption of the proceedings and the committee is not respected, it may be necessary to temporarily adjourn the meeting. Finally, can I welcome members of the public to the meeting? Those of you who have registered to speak, I will call you forward when it is your turn and make your contribution. Members of the committee may ask you questions of clarification, so please remain at the microphone until after members' questions. The microphone is turned on by pressing the button on the base of the unit, and a timer will appear on the screen to remind you of your remaining time. Turning to the agenda. Item 1, apologies and deputy members.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence received from Councillor Edwards, with Councillor Williams deputising. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we now have to appoint a deputy chair just for this meeting. So I'd like to nominate Councillor Ashwell to do that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Small, thank you. Any other nominations? If you'd like to come up and join me, please, Councillor Ashwell. Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda, disclosures of interest. Do any members have any disclosures of interest to declare? Councillor Reid.
Chairman, as a former mayor of the city, who also holds the office of President of the Scouts, and on the first application, the Scouts are mentioned on quite a few occasions. But I have no further contact with the Scouts directly.
You have
Winchester. No.
This is not predetermining it or anything. You're just declaring. Okay, thank you. Any other declarations of interest? Councillor Lee.
Yes, personal but non-prejudicial interest in respect of item 6, as I'm the ward councillor.
Okay, thank you. Any others? Councillor Cunningham.
As former mayor of Winchester as well, I was president of the Scouts group and opened up to declare.
I think there are lots of former mayors around the table.
Same declaration.
I think we should all make that declaration, but I think that's taken as read. Thank you very much, Councillor Cunningham. I don't think any of us feel we need to. Right, item 3. The minutes of the last meeting have been tabled and you will also all have received them through the email. So can I accept those minutes as an accurate record of the last meeting? All those, is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. And we also need to accept the update sheet at item number 4 onto the agenda. Is that accepted, members? Agreed? Thank you. We now turn to the planning applications.
Chairman, before we start, can I just have a clarification on the first application? Am I right in thinking this is a Winchester City Council application?
Yes.
It's not mentioned on the application, and normally we do mention them as being.
Lorna?
Thank you, Chair. If there was one objection, that would be the reason it came to committee, but this has got quite a lot of objections, so that's why, that's the reason that it comes to committee. The application forms will have the Winchester City Council sort of details of the applicant. So in terms of, if you're concerned in terms of the trigger process for committee, the reason is that sort of the volume of objections as per sort of normal trigger points.
Sorry, Chair, I was just thinking of openness and clarity. It shows the general public that it is a Winchester application and not there just on the merits of being a number of objections.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. I'm sure that we can happily confirm that this is a Winchester City Council application for council housing. Right. So item number 6 on our agenda. This is an application to develop a site at Dyson Drive in Winchester, and it's the development of 8 two-storey affordable houses, plus associated car parking and landscaping. And the officer presenting is Catherine Watson. Good morning, Catherine. If you'd like to give us your presentation, please.
Thank you, Chair. I do have a verbal update with regards to an additional condition. So our contaminated land officer has included a standard condition which states that if once development has commenced, if any potential contamination is encountered, then the details of this and how it will be mitigated would need to be submitted and approved to the local planning authority and approved in writing. So yeah, that would be an additional condition to add should members be minded to approve the application.
Thank you, Kat.
So the application is for 8 new dwellings on land at Dyson Drive. Here we can see the proposed block plan. So we've got at the top we've got two dwellings here, which are two bedrooms each. On the side we've got 4 3-bedroom properties, and at the bottom we've got another 2 2-bedroom properties. Here we have the satellite view, so you can see Dyson Drive, Worthy Road, Chaundler Road, and get an appreciation of the open space here with trees along the boundaries, hedging, and open grassed space. Here we have the proposed roof plan. So again, it just gives an idea of the layout of the scheme. So we've got the houses here, we've got the access from Dyson Drive, and we've got parking, which is adjacent to the nursing or care home. Here we have proposed landscaping. So just as a appreciate the lettering's not very clear, but the lighter green spaces are gardens for the properties. At the top here it shows the existing trees, and on the open space around the properties that will be laid to wildflower meadow and some additional trees at the bottom of the site. Here we have a tree protection plan, so that just shows again the existing trees, how they will, their root protection area, how they'll be protected during construction, and managed through that phase. So here we have floor plans of plots 1 and 2. So the left-hand side is the ground floor, so you'll see the division between the 2 properties is central here, and then we've got gardens to the front, and then we've got open plan living dining areas. To the right we've got the first floor, which shows 2 bedrooms, again separated in the middle, plot 1 and plot 2, 2 bedrooms each per property. And here we have the elevations of plots 1 and 2. So proposed materials are slate roof, a light multicoloured brick, and to the rear we've got some brick detailing around the windows, with a brick that stands away from the main elevations, just to add a bit of interest and a bit of texture to the buildings. Here we have plots 3 to 6 ground floor plan. So again, they're separated. You can see the walls that separate them, and gardens to the front. And here we have the first floor plan. So you'll see that there are 3 bedrooms in each property. And here are the elevations. So same materials, same sort of detailing. And then this just gives an idea of the end elevations of these properties. Plot 7 and 8, we have the floor plans. So on the left hand side, we've got the ground floor plans. On the right hand side, we've got actually three bedrooms there. And then the elevations, which again are similar to the previous dwellings. Here you can see street scene from Dyson Drive, so it's an indicative view. We can see the trees existing that are being retained, and we can see the nursing home in the background. And then sections through the site. So the top section that shows that's adjacent to Worthy Road, and the ground, you'll see how the ground slopes down towards the Francis Gardens end of the site. The middle section shows the houses and plots 3 to 6. And then the bottom shows a bit further through the site more, and it shows the central part of the site. So here we have some photos. So here we can see the western boundary with Worthy Road. So we've got an ivy covered brick wall. We've got some trees and shrubs, and these will be largely retained. Then here we can see the junction of Dyson Drive and Worthy Road. So Worthy Road runs along the bottom, and we've got Dyson Drive, and again some very sort of large trees. And these are more photos from Dyson Drive looking at the site. So again, we can see those trees in there. Then looking from partway down Dyson Drive, looking towards Worthy Road in the distance and the nursing home there. And this is the junction of Dyson Drive and Francis Gardens. And again, just another view from Francis Gardens, looking at the site there. And then a view further along Francis Gardens. You'll see the site. New access is proposed to go in about centrally. And then just for some context, there's some of the existing dwellings which run along Francis Gardens. So they're all either semi-detached, or there are some terrace properties there as well. And again, just a bit of context looking towards the site here. And that concludes my presentation. The recommendation is to permit, subject to the conditions contained in the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Okay, we now move to the public speaking. Our first speakers are Mr. Hardy and Ms. Street, and I believe you have a presentation as well, if you'd like to come forward. Lovely. And you have 3 minutes between you, but please stay afterwards in case the members have questions of clarification. Okay, thank you. And when you start, the timer will start. And don't forget to switch on your microphones. Yes, just press the button at the back.
Can you hear me? The planning officer's report, which reaches this conclusion about the balance of benefit versus harm of the application, acknowledges several strong planning reasons why this development should not go ahead. This is not an exhaustive list, but shows some of the most common harmful impacts raised by residents. We won't dwell on these slides showing the national and local planning policies, which state that this protected open space should not be developed. You've read the report and you know this. Instead, we'll try and show the recommendation that overstates the scheme's benefits and wildly underestimates the scheme's many negative impacts on our community. Firstly, parking and road safety issues. The Russell Road and Dyson Drive entrance points to the site are linked by Chandler Road, which is regularly used by children and families walking, cycling and driving to and from school, and also crossing to the park opposite, and will now suffer increased traffic congestion and risk. A neighbour actually told us yesterday that he and his family will consider moving if this is the case. The two official parking surveys were flawed and carried out over the Easter holidays with just 30 minutes for a single Sunday, underestimating the number of parked cars. The subsequent plans do not account for worst case scenarios or winter periods. Flow of traffic is also ignored. Change in tenancies on Dyson has led to a significant increase in parked cars, particularly vans, creating a single lane thoroughfare and increased congestion. A bin lorry stopping anywhere along this road will simply block traffic.
Next slide, please. Secondly, the recommendation totally fails to grasp the value of Abbots Barton community places on Dyson Drive, especially as a safe, overlooked space for informal supervised play and sports. If the pandemic has taught us nothing else, it's surely how irreplaceable such assets are. My own daughter had her 4th socially distanced birthday party here. Next slide, please. This just shows the overlooking unique aspects of this place. Next slides, please. If you could skip on to the quotes, slide 13. This is a heavily used space, that's it. It's our children's football field. These opinions about its value are totally missing from the report. Next slide, please. Also missing is any real consideration of what losing this space will mean for the community, and here are some views on that. Next slide, please. A quick word about mitigation. Presenting past and speculative unrelated future projects as adequate mitigation for the loss of this uniquely valuable community space is disingenuous. Next slide, please. In summary, there is widespread objection to this scheme. Consultation has been inadequate and non-existent for recent residents. There is only one resident on Dyson Drive that was part of the 2013 framework consultation. This is an area that is changing. There are more young families working from home more. The climate, biodiversity, obesity and mental health crises are acute. This area is already in the lowest 20% nationally for mental
That's the
health.
end of your time. I'm sorry to stop you in mid-flow. Thank you very much for your presentation. Are there any other slides that you wanted to show us? No, the summary is the final slide.
This is the final slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Members, do we have questions of clarification for either of our participants? Could I just ask about the parking summary, the survey which you mentioned?
Yeah.
In our report, it indicates that the parking survey was rather more extensive than you're suggesting.
We
Why-
have a spreadsheet with all the dates. So it was actually done between, I think it was the 25th of April to 13th of May. And then there was another the following year, 2022, which I think was just 10 days or something. There was only a single Sunday that we could find. And that recorded 10 cars. But it was during the Easter period where it's just not that busy.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That's very clear. Any other questions? Councillor Lee.
You mentioned using the open space and happy moment during the COVID pandemic. But can you give me some idea of what is the actual usage, do you think, from the other families in the street? Is it high or?
Please, could you go back to the quotes? I think it's slide 15. It's daily use, basically. If the weather is good, someone is out there. The reason that I'm motivated to come and speak here is because the people that use that space most, it's like teenagers playing football. They have no voice in this process. They've not been part of this, and they stand to lose a huge amount. And that's not evident in the assessment of the balance of harm versus benefit of this scheme. That's why I'm here. I'm speaking for them. I'm speaking for all of these people that use the space in multiple ways. But that's one way. It's sports, recreation. It's all of the things that the pandemic has told us that we need. It's 2013. We need healthy spaces as well as affordable housing. This is for the future as well as for residents now. Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you, Chair. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Abbots Walk play area and Hilliers Haven, which were done as previous mitigations for previous developments at Francis Gardens and Hilliers Way, and how that is helping to families in the way?
It's a completely different type of space to this space. This is informal green space that's used for sports, recreation, lots of different ways. That, incidentally, is the space that was lost to build the houses on Hilliers Way. So Hilliers Haven is a completely incomparable space. What we need to do is hold on to this kind of green space. That's what residents need.
I have a quote actually from one of the neighbours. Hilliers Haven was provided in mitigation for new buildings. This is from Muriel, by the way. She gave this to us yesterday. It is A, past, and B, a bad thing. That area is not safe to walk through as it has been used by drug users. Unlike Dyson Drive, which is open and completely safe, it is also irrelevant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions of clarification, members? Thank you very much indeed. If you could switch off the microphone and return to your seats. Thank you. We now have one of the ward councillors, Councillor Tippett Cooper. If you could come forward, please, Councillor Tippett Cooper. Thank you. And you will have 5 minutes from when you start speaking. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I've thought long and hard about this planning application to build 8 new homes, 6 council homes and 2 affordable homes on this site that runs along Dyson's Drive. There are compelling and strongly held arguments for and against this application. But if you visit this site, it is a flat grassy island amongst the surrounding housing development, and it has become fondly used play space for local children and a place to hold community events, as very clearly articulated by Dr. Street and Mr. Hardy. Now, they have far more effectively than I ever could set out the local community's objections to the planning application in their presentation to you. And I urge you to read that presentation they have prepared. They have only had 3 minutes to present it, and it has a lot of really, really important detail. It sets out a very clear and thorough summary of the objections. Now, for my part, I have an obligation to represent my ward constituents and advocate for them. And in this regard, I would urge you to consider all the details of the objections to this scheme. There are valid concerns about the loss of community space, the parking issues and the road safety issues. And in particular, I would add that first, I have anecdotally been told by several residents they do not recognise any suggestion that this green space is rarely utilised. It is, as Dr. Street says, somewhere highly valued by the local community who live there. Second, Dr. Street and Mr. Hardy articulate the frustration felt by the planning application's point that the compensatory space proposed for this scheme is space that the community have already been provided with in compensation for previous development. Now, I do not think this is adequate at all, and this needs to be reviewed at the very least, and a revised position on the compensatory provision put forward to Abbots Barton residents. Now, there is another side to this argument, and that is what is now vital creation of affordable homes. And it's a credit to Dr. Street and Mr. Hardy, they do indeed acknowledge this in their application. And as a local councillor, I also have a duty to advocate for the increasingly long list of families that appear on the council's housing register. Many of these have been looking for homes in St Bartholomew Ward for a very long time. And indeed, these families on the housing register are a group that they don't always get the advocacy they need to defend their interests. So this site has been earmarked for housing development for a long time, and I understand Even the housing on Dyson Drives appears in even numbers, as the odd numbers were always due to arrive eventually, and apparently on this site. The council housing in Abbots Barton has over the years been converted to privately owned housing for sale, some of it anyway, to the private housing market. And this has meant that families on the council housing list are squeezed out of the opportunity to live in this amazing supportive community that you find at Abbots Barton. And now it's an area connected to excellent schools, it has easy access to the city centre, and is surrounded by neighbours who look out for each other and care for each other. And the presentation you've heard today is a perfect example of how that community comes together. Now, we are in a national and local housing crisis. This is not an application by private developers hell-bent on profit, regardless of the cost of the community. The Winchester City Council housing waiting list has many families that desperately need new council homes that become available. And the current economic situation makes it even harder for them. And housing like this is a total lifeline. So it is undeniable that there is a clear benefit to the Abbots Barton community, given that these will be 6 new homes for Winchester families who are most likely some of the most financially in need, as well as 2 further affordable homes. So this is what this application ultimately comes down to, a battle between those 2 competing community interests. And on the one hand, if you deny the application, 6 of the least well-off families in our district from the housing list, and 2 further families in need of an affordable home on the housing market, 8 families in total, will lose the opportunity of a wonderful new home in the brilliant community that there is in Abbots Barton. But if you grant the application, the current residents in and around Dyson's Drive and Francis Gardens lose forever this outdoor communal space they greatly value, and they incur practical difficulties like the loss of the limited parking space and indeed many months of building on their doorstep. Please, again, I would urge you to read that application from the residents, because the presentation from the residents, because it sets it out far more effectively than I could. And the residents before you state today that the benefit of the development to the community outweighs the harm caused by the loss of this facility. And that is ultimately the difficult decision that faces you today, Madam Chair and committee. These are not easy decisions, and there are compelling arguments on both sides. And ultimately, I urge the panel to carefully consider the residents' objections, as well as the papers prepared by the council officers.
Thank you, Councillor Tippett-Cooper. Members, do we have any questions of clarification? Councillor Laming.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair. Is this section 52 land or 106?
I think that might be a question for the officer, Councillor Laming.
Okay.
She can look it up now. Councillor Lee.
Thank you. I wonder if you could just expand on the comments you made about the compensatory spaces in the area being inadequate, I think you said.
Yes, I mean, as I think it's all been picked up on by the residents in the paper, the compensatory space described as spaces like Hilliers Haven, that has already been provided. This green space is utilised in a particular way. It's a flat, safely overlooked space, and I've got small children. I'd be far more comfortable with them being on this space than I would be alone in Hilliers Haven. The compensatory space in places like there is simply not the same sort of safe space for children in particular, and it's not the same sort of flat space that can provide community events, that can provide sports games. So it is very, very different as a space.
Councillor Lee, could you switch off your microphone, please? Thank you. Any other questions of clarification for the ward councillor? No, many thanks, Councillor Tippett-Cooper. You may return to your seat. We now have 4 registered speakers to support the application, but you have to share 3 minutes as everybody else. So would you like to come forward? The normal procedure is that one of you speaks and then the others are available to answer questions. So is that how you're going to organise it? You're going to split the time. Good luck with that. Okay, thank you very much indeed for coming along. We have Deborah Sunley, Jeremy Tyrrell, Ian Tate and Mark Johnson. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Before I start, if I could just introduce myself, Deborah Sunley from the New Homes team in the council, Jeremy Tyrrell from T2 Architects, Mark Johnson is here to answer queries on landscaping from Ubu Landscape, and Ian Tate. The land at Dyson Drive is part of the wider council-owned estate of Abbots Barton, acquired in 1966 for statutory housing purposes. Community consultations beginning in 2012 identified the site as suitable for development, and this informed the Abbots Barton planning framework approved by Cabinet in 2013. Local members were consulted and supported plans in May 2018. Consistent with the Climate Emergency Council Plan priority, it's our ambition to develop the housing to passive house standards, so reducing carbon emissions. Options for open space mitigation identified the community or the framework not already delivered have been thoroughly explored and exhausted. The comprehensive investigations are considered demonstrative of the commitment to try to secure mitigation both suitable and proportionate to the development. The plans support the overriding need for housing and homes for all council priority by delivering high quality affordable family homes. Since 2012, the council has delivered 438 homes, and these new homes will support the council's target to build 1,000 homes by 2030.
T2 architects were appointed in 2017 to work on this project. We looked to improve upon the initial capacity study that was prepared for the site within the planning framework. This showed a layout set well back from the road with a central parking court and vehicle access via Dyson Drive. The conclusions of our analysis of the site was that 9 dwellings was one too many, and that the dwellings could be closer to Dyson Drive in order to create better separation with the care home to the rear. The layout and access for 8 new affordable homes has been heavily influenced by the 2 large trees at either end of Dyson Drive. We wanted these to remain the dominant feature, with the houses set back at an angle, so the view of the eastern tree is retained upon approach from Worthy Lane. All trees, except one small white beam, are to be retained. In response to the comments received at the public consultation, the scheme was amended so that plots 7 and 8 were moved further into the site to avoid interlooking with properties on Francis Gardens. Following the declaration of the climate emergency, the New Homes team requested if passive house standards could be met. We have been able to achieve passive house principles here by adopting a fabric-first approach with thick external walls, very high levels of insulation and air tightness. Each dwelling will have an air source heat pump, mechanical ventilation, heat recovery, and a smart hot water cylinder. The internal floor areas are in excess of the nationally described space standards. Thank you.
Gosh, it's been a very long journey from 2012. I fully support this excellent application for 8 highly sustainable and affordable homes, which I hope you can support. Many thanks.
Well done. Thank you very much. To the second. Members, do we have any questions? Councillor Lee.
Thank you for that. Just picking up on your passive house approach, which obviously is very important for the affordability running costs for the property and the climate emergency. You talked about passive house principles rather than standard. Are you going to be meeting the passive house standard? Air quality, the air pressure, the actual heat loss, optimal numbers.
As to whether these will be certified passive houses, that's not the decision that the New Homes team have come to yet. But the fundamental principles of passive house are what have been designed in currently. So achieving exceptional air tightness and insulation are the 2 keys. So it's as I mentioned, a fabric first approach. So obviously the aim is to ensure the fuel bills are as low as possible for the tenants.
And I note, I don't know if the schematic is just a schematic, and the photovoltaics and solar energy on the roof. Is that a thought or a provision to be considered?
So we did, I think you might ask that. We haven't shown PV panels on the roof because the passive house modelling that we've carried out so far demonstrates they're not required. So the heat demand of the houses as designed does not require additional bolt-on renewable technology. It's not to say we couldn't put them on, but photovoltaic panels are expensive. The performance here will not be optimal because of the tree shading, and that will also have an extra requirement for additional cleaning. So, as I say, they could be put on, but it's not required in order to meet passive house.
Thank you. And if I may just follow up, picking up on the trees. I know the biodiversity net gain for this site is approximately 5%. And I'm just wondering, is that something that you've considered in terms of just being adequate, or are you able to perhaps increase that? And if so, would you have any thoughts to that?
I'll let Mark Johnson, the landscape architect.
So as has been presented and discussed, the maintenance of the existing mature trees is one of the big elements of retaining biodiversity on site. The majority of the grassland is medium quality amenity grassland. So the loss of that doesn't necessarily reduce the biodiversity. So we've tried to optimise the biodiversity within the planting by maximising the amount of native species that have been planted. Due to the development, the optimum amount, as you've already expressed, is what can be gained at the moment. We can explore further, but we think we've maximised the amount of net gain that we can achieve at this moment.
Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Yes, no, it was just a following on the biodiversity net gain. There's a figure of 2.88% as biodiversity net gain. Now, normally, from my short experience of planning committees, we're always asking developers to try and push that figure as high as possible. Especially as this coming from a Winchester City Council application. Why is that figure, in my opinion, so low?
I'm not the ecologist, I'm the landscape architect. But my understanding of the matrix and the way that works within the DEFRA spreadsheet is that essentially the baseline is a green field. So any development within that green field is reducing the area of green. And as I've said, it's of relative poor quality in a ecological stance. So the enhancement has come within the areas that are left, such as Jeremy's alluded to, the wildflower meadows to the north east, and the native planting that we've incorporated within. So we are trying to optimise the amount of biodiversity, but it's very difficult on small sites to try and get it higher or up to the 10%, which is the sort of panacea. So I think we've optimised what we can within the site, and again, it's a balance between development and biodiversity.
Thank you. Councillor Laming and then Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Tyrrell, when you've laid these out, you've done an excellent job, except for I cannot see how they're going to have any EV charging on them. Have you given that any consideration, because you've considered the passive house standard and everything else, which is highly commendable, but surely we should have some EV charging on there.
Thank you, Councillor Laming. Yes, EV charging can be incorporated. We haven't specifically shown which parking spaces would have those, but that does now come within building regulations. So yes, EV charging will be incorporated to meet the current regulations.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at the boundary treatment for the particular gardens, especially the one that is very close to an existing tree, what is the treatment for that boundary of the property?
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Sorry, could you clarify which, if we're looking at that plan, are we looking at the left side, right side, which?
Is that house number 2, Councillor Reid?
It's number 2, I think, yes.
2, okay. The boundary treatment you would like to know about.
Sorry?
Are you asking what the boundary treatment is?
What is the boundary treatment?
So plots 1 and 2 have an enclosed front garden with a low brick wall and then hedging within it.
So the brick wall will obviously have to have foundations.
Yes.
And you're underneath the canopy of the tree.
Yes, partially. There's a small area within the protection zone there, but that will all be subject to the tree constraints plan that you can see on the screen there.
Can you remind me what type of tree that is, please?
Ask the landscape architect.
I believe it's an oak tree.
So the oak tree, its roots are on the surface.
They do, but within the AIA, the Arboricultural Impact Assessment, there is mitigation set out how that will be dealt with as far as building the shallow foundations for the brick wall. And it is the incursion is, again, I'm not the arborist, but the incursion is of a minor amount. It's not a large foundation as you would do for the construction of the houses.
I agree, it's not a large foundation, but it could unsteady the tree. Thank you.
Many of these questions could also be asked of the officer and get another, a more official. Okay, many thanks indeed for coming along today. You may return to your seats. That's the end of our public speaking. Now, Catherine, do we have any extra comments that you'd like to make before we come to questions?
Thank you, Chair. Just to continue on the query about biodiversity net gain, Mr. Tyrrell's mentioned about the meadows. Also, it does include swift bricks, hedgehog highways. I think there's some back facilities as well. So although the overall figure of net gain is quite low, this is something that we've looked at really closely to try and achieve the highest amount we can. And our consultant ecologist has said, whilst it is lower than she'd prefer, she doesn't have any objection to what is proposed. And we do have a condition which is condition 11, or conditions 9 through to 11 cover ecology, but condition 11 says that a management plan for the biodiversity net gain needs to be submitted pre-development. So there may be some opportunities to explore if there are any other features that can increase net gain as part of that condition. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, members, it's quite a big report, but it's not unmanageably so. So I'm happy to have questions on any element. Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Page 17, fourth paragraph down, says the NPPF paragraph 99 says that existing open space should not be built upon unless the land is surplus to requirements. On page 10, the service lead for the community and wellbeing has indicated there is a deficiency of 2.83 hectares. How does this relate, please?
Thank you, Chair. As with any site where open space is being lost, the planning balance has to be weighed up as to the benefit to the community of the open space, and we've heard from local residents about that. With the benefit of for local residents, people of Winchester, of having 8 new council and affordable houses on the site. So in my report, it does go through that analysis. Also, our policy does state that open space shouldn't be lost unless there are community benefits to the scheme that's proposed. So yes, whilst the NPPF does say that, our local plan does give scope for exploring that in particular circumstances. And in this instance, as I said in my report, various options were considered as mitigation, but they were not considered to be appropriate or acceptable for this application. And that's where the planning balance comes in. Thanks. Thank you.
Chair, can I just add to that and just clarify the status of the NPPF in terms of your considerations of it? The first thing that we must do when considering planning applications is make decisions in accordance with the development plan, which is our local policy, which you'd referred to, Councillor Reid. This has the most weight. Unless other material considerations indicate that we should be taking a different decision, And of course, the MPPF would be considered another material consideration. How in this case, the MPPF paragraph 99 predated our local plan adoption. So that's to follow that that policy has been considered by an inspector within the framework of the MPPF and that particular paragraph 99. So it wouldn't have so much weight unless it was perhaps an amended paragraph that had come from the government after the adoption of our local plan. So that's the status of that. So the local plan policy has the most weight. We certainly have to consider, as we've heard a lot today, the difficult decision that there is in balancing these two needs of our local communities. But in terms of your weighting those considerations, I just wanted to sort of assist with that, where we've got the slight difference in flexibility of the MPPF and then the local plan. So you can give most weight to the local plan and the flexibility that is afforded there. And then, as you've heard, you've got a full case and a story really in terms of how the council has considered this site, and that's set out, and that's a material consideration too. And you have to balance that. Thank you.
Chairman, can I ask them why that particular paragraph was even bothered to be put in the report? Because it goes on to state, as you're quite well aware, the loss resulting from the proposed development would be replaced by equivalent or better provision. So that is not happening.
That's correct, Councillor. That isn't happening, and it's a difficult one because we want to be able to meet all policy requirements, but in some cases, particularly on sites like this, they are constrained and it's not always easy to meet. And so this is where the planning balance comes in, and that's what members have to consider today. Our recommendation was a difficult one, but we've tried to present all of the concerns about the loss of the open space to you, and that's for you to take into account. It doesn't meet the policy, but we're giving the reasons in the report, which are set out about all the attempts that have been made to try to meet the policy and replace back some of that. So there's a broader context to that, which is set out in the report for you to do. Yes.
Yes, can we have a legal contribution from Mr. Lucas?
I think councillors and Councillor Reid, what Lorna's said is essentially the position in law. If I read to you your basic principles as to how you go about determining an application, it makes the point that my colleagues already mentioned quite clear. It says, this is the Planning Compulsory Purchase Act 2004, section 38, subsection 6. If regard is to be had to the development plan for the purposes of any determination to be made under the Planning Acts, the determination must, now that word is key, must is a duty in law. You have to do this. You can't abrogate from this. You can't pick and choose. It's not discretionary. Must is mandatory in law. So it says the determination must be made in accordance with the plan. So the plan has primacy here, your local plan, the Winchester local plan. However, it caveats it with unless material considerations suggest otherwise. So material considerations could be the historical position, any fallbacks, any statutory consultees, any objections. The National Planning Policy Framework, the national policy, is a material consideration. As you've heard, it doesn't take primacy here. So ultimately, you put everything into your planning toolkit, the plan, the policies, any material considerations, the objections, the MPPF, and you decide whether or not you should go with the plan, or actually the planning balance is tipped by the material considerations here. So as my colleagues already mentioned, you're given everything here to put into your planning toolbox. So you can come up with, well, actually the weight should be here, or we're persuaded by the material considerations there. And ultimately it's really a matter for you. So you're charged with that obligation in law to look at the plan first of all, unless the material considerations suggest otherwise. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Mr. Lucas. Councillor Laming.
Following on from that, the original question that I asked was, is this section 52 land?
That doesn't necessarily follow on from the test about how you determine an application. The history of the site. Yeah, so section 52 is a predecessor to what we now call section 106. Correct. So in the Town and Country Planning Act 1990, a section 106 agreement allows for, shall we say, items of infrastructure to be agreed to offset any planning harm. So in there you may have, for example, provisions about affordable housing, open space and so on. So the section 106 agreement deals with those aspects outside of the normal determination that an officer will do. Lawyers draft the Section 106. Section 52 is the predecessor to the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. Ultimately, however, the position will be the same. If the land was transferred under a Section 52 agreement, it just happens to be that's the old Town and Country Planning Act. It just carries the same name now as a Section 106. So the point is academic. If the land was conveyed to the Winchester City Council under Section 52, it has no particular, shall we say, relevance to your determination today. Ultimately, the land was transferred to Winchester City Council, be it under a Section 52 or the modern day equivalent of a Section 106.
Yeah, the reason I'm asking this is because we've got this going on Baddock Farm at the moment with Section 52, and we were told that Section 52 means that if you wish to develop that land, you've got to find alternative land to replace that open space. Now, does that must take relevance here?
Councillor, so the point about what's happening on other sites is not really material to your consideration today. Ultimately, the application before you is the application that you're deciding.
It's the principle of Section 52.
So without seeing the Section 52 agreement or a Section 106 agreement, I can't advise this particular committee. However, if the land transferred under the Section 52 is freehold held by Winchester City Council, and there are no obligations or restrictions or restricted covenants on that, it's not an issue. What you're deciding is the actual planning application. If there are any covenants which prevent development, that's outside the public law realm. That will be a private law matter, not necessarily a public law matter. So I hear what you say about other sites. I haven't seen the other sites. I haven't advised on the other side. I'm advising you as a committee member as to whether or not you can make a determination on this. And I can tell you, yes, you can.
Thank you, Councillor Lamy. Thank you. More questions? Councillor Williams.
I'm going to presume the answer is no before I ask the question. But I was wondering if there was any metric of community benefit. So, for instance, on this particular site, we can see that there will be a benefit to 8 families from the permission of this. However, there will be a loss of X number of people enjoying that community asset in the open space. I was just wondering if there was any balance from that, or any metric that we could sort of help us decide, really.
Chair, there's no metric. I think these are not like quantifiable issues. It's about the value and then the balance. We've tried to sort of list out the positives that there are. Providing affordable housing obviously goes without saying, it's a corporate sort of priority, and that feeds into our local plan anyway. So there you can therefore assume that you can attach a very high level of weight to that. So it's all about weighting the different issues. How important is it to you as a committee member of the local planning authority, which is reflected from our local plan? That helps.
I think it all adds up to it's a difficult decision. Right. More questions? Councillor Lee, thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on what Councillor Williams said. We have statutory consultees, Natural England and so on. If the NHS or local social services were perhaps a consultee, the reduction in health and well-being opportunity by the loss of this open space would be manifest. And that was ably demonstrated during the pandemic. And as a citizens advice advisor for many years, I recognise that is something which is paramount when you have situations of extreme situations that we did experience. And I just wonder, is there something that we may can refer to, we may wish to refer to help our decision making, because this is very difficult. It's a conflict between affordable homes, which is manifestly needed, and then we've got loss of open space, and then we've got loss of perhaps biodiversity. So it's a real challenge.
Yeah, I was just going to ask actually, Lorna, if I may. Yeah, what I think you need to understand is the wider context of the area. So I was going to ask if Catherine could show perhaps some maps showing where the next nearest open space is and how much of it there is that is available to local residents. Do we have a map showing that?
Just give us a minute.
Yep, we're going to just get a plan up Are there any further questions? If you could just indicate so we can make a list of who's waiting to speak. Nobody else? Okay.
Thanks, Chair. We did bring a plan with us, so we're just getting that. So what you can see, because one of the main contentions when we tried to summarise this in the planning balance is the context and environment of the area. So it is noted that there is a deficit in terms of the 2022 open space assessment. However, one of the things that we are recommending you could take into account is the environment, and there is an awful lot of open space in this area, particularly compared to other areas. And the open space assessment kind of takes us through why there's a shortfall, which is certainly to do with sort of parish boundary changes and increasing population. So we'll get that. So that is set out there. And in terms of biodiversity gain, a site like this you'll be seeing more of probably, because these small sites, it's quite difficult to achieve 10%, especially where they are fully vegetated already, although, as it's been pointed out, the quality of what's there is not great, which affords some ability to raise it up. The government scheme is on sites like this that can't meet it on site. There is an off-site, either credited scheme or the landowner can find their own site. So it'll work a bit like the nitrates, but we're not there yet because the government haven't brought that to us to ensure that it's a statutory and achievable and deliverable gain. So that's kind of the context of the biodiversity net gain. So what we're doing here is that's a positive. There's no measure to sort of meet as such.
Are we very nearly there? Councillor Lee, do you want to come in before that?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out in the list of documents that are relevant for this particular planning application, you mentioned the climate emergency, but the nature emergency declaration is not mentioned, and it should be. And certainly, I think one of the resolutions in that nature emergency was improved doorstep access to nature. You know, you're actually removing the doorstep access to that small space, which is a space of nature.
Members can take that into account, but again, it's not part of the development plan framework, and it's a direction of travel that will be moving forward. But it's certainly, we can put some weight on it to consider that further in the round.
So perhaps you could explain what we're looking at here, Kat.
Thank you, Chair. This is shows the open space within St Bartholomew Ward, which this site is within. I've pointed out where Dyson Drive is, so it's site number 12. And there's different types of open space. So we've got informal green space, we've got play areas, and we've got natural open space, and then we've got sports grounds and allotments. But Dyson Drive is informal open space. It's probably the smallest, or one of the smallest of the sites, but that should hopefully just give an idea to you about what open space is available in the area. And obviously we can see going down towards the Nunn Stream, we've got quite a lot of open space of different types in the ward.
Thank you. Although I do understand that in terms of level playing fields, informal open space, there's not a huge amount of level open spaces, so that it tends to be sloping down towards the river.
It does, land does slope down towards the Nunn Stream, yes.
Helen, where is the nearest informal open space to this particular site? It's all very nice hearing about all other sorts of sites, but where is the nearest informal?
Thank you, Chair. Do you mean sites that have been developed on, or do you mean
Ones that you can go and kick a ball?
Oh, right. Okay. Yes. So we've got a bit difficult to tell because it's quite small, but there are there's a large open space off Chaundler Road, which has football nets on it, and it's also got a playground on it, and that slopes down towards the Nun stream. So it's around about here, I think, the informal green space along here, which is number 16. Then we've got the stream which runs along here, so it's quite close to the site.
I think 14 is a new field, isn't it, at the end of the Cassandra Drive? That's quite a big space. I mean, I've been there. There is obviously some play equipment there, but there is a big open space as well. Councillor Lee.
Sorry, one of the other points I wanted to highlight is part of our climate emergency, and it's part of the nature emergency, and it's part of well-being, is that every bit of green space you remove means that you add more built, hard engineered environment. That means that the heat island effect that we're creating for the future, we're not future-proofing this area, and it's also making it harder for general well-being when the temperatures do arise in the future, which are going to be manifest. So another consideration, which I appreciate may not be material in the way our plans are written. Hopefully we'll capture that in our next local plan, but we should perhaps try and consider that for this site.
Yeah, point taken. Councillor Reid.
Chairman, I noticed the Highway Authority have raised a concern with regard to the largest size of service vehicles that may attend the site. And I noticed it's condition 18. Have we not got any idea as to where these bins are going to be stored? Because we're talking the possibility of 16 bins, which is a large number.
Thank you, Chair. Each property has a bin store and cycle store outside, and the condition 18, as you rightly point out, Councillor, requires a waste management plan to show where the bin collection points would be. So we'd expect that they would be within the site, but closer towards the main access into the site to enable bin lorries to go in and collect those. Thank you, Chair.
I think it's common for most places to have the bins brought out for the collection day.
As you know, Chair, it's also quite common that these are actually on the planning application, as they're an important aspect of the planning.
Councillor Lee.
Yeah, just picking up on Councillor Reid's point. Again, I think about future-proofing waste management. We're going to need more space for wider collection as our waste management processes improve. So is it just the basic standard as is, or are we future-proofing the actual space for additional bins, which are likely going to be required in the future?
Thank you, Chair. It's standard practice now for new dwellings to have their own allocated space for bins, and that usually goes alongside a cycle store. That's standard practice. It's also common to then present the bins on collection day in a communal area, which would be within the site for ease of collection for the refuse lorry. We don't really know what will happen in the future and what the future demands would be. That's not really something we can consider here. It's not really quantifiable at this point in time. But yes, certainly the strategy, which details of which will be submitted via condition 18, would allow careful consideration of the location of any communal bin collection area to ensure that it doesn't impact on the surrounding streets and is sufficient to collect all the bins that we have now for various different requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I just ask about the parking survey which was done? There's some doubt being cast on its validity. If you could just reassure us on that point.
Thank you, Chair. The parking survey was undertaken last year, over a period of about 5 weeks. Officers of the council conducted the survey, some of which was after dusk. So there was there is information about the traffic movements and parking at all times of the day. It's a valid parking survey. It's recording how many vehicles park at certain times of day, and so we've accepted it as being valid and showing sufficient data in order to be able to determine whether there'd be what sort of impact they'd be on the surrounding area and whether or not it'd be sufficiently harmful as to want a refusal for that particular case. Thank you.
And the other question, I was reading the objections, and somebody described the design of the houses as resembling prison blocks. Could you just comment on that? I think maybe we don't get the full impact from the pictures that have been shown.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's nearly always the case that no matter how well drawn the plans and elevations are, you never always get the very full appreciation of them. There are some important details. So the materials, as I said earlier, are going to be high quality materials of slate, a light-coloured multi-brick. And then on the current slide, you'll see at the bottom the sort of darker areas around the windows. Those are going to be brick detailing, so they'll stand away from the main elevation to give a bit more interest in the visual design. We do have a condition requiring details of all materials and detailing to be submitted, so we can use that to control that the very highest quality of materials is submitted and the detailing is of a high quality. But I'm quite, in my assessment, I'm quite confident that these properties do represent good design, and as we've heard from Mr. Tyrrell, be aiming for or be achieving passive house level standard. So yes, I hope that helps, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions, members? Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Page 20, third paragraph down, refers to the off-street parking of 16 bays. Are these bays going to be designated parking, so each house will know exactly which is their particular parking spot?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. The parking provision allows for 2 spaces per property. They're within the site. I don't know whether they're individually going to be numbered, but each property does have the space for 2 spaces. So we would consider that to be sufficient for a development of this type. I think the main thing is that they're all within the site, and then how they get divided between who parks where, I think would probably be a sort of more of an informal matter between the local residents. But it could be, we could require them to be labelled house 1, house 2, house 3, but I'm not sure whether that's particularly necessary in this instance. Thank you, Chair.
So, if there are no more questions to the officer, okay, yeah, I think we're just going to have a bit more about the policy about open spaces from Lorna Hutchings. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It was in response to Councillor Williams. We were just looking at the open space strategy a bit further. see Kat's assess that in detail, but I thought it would be helpful to highlight some of the specifics to help you appropriately weight the importance of this space, because it's about the strategy. And if you find that the importance of the space outweighs the importance of the affordable housing, we have to prove harm. What is the problem? So if you put that into the context of the policy, then that's your thinking sort of on this one. So on page page 38 of the open space strategy, which was updated last year, it looks at St Bart's ward, and it says needs and opportunities, having identified a quantifiable calculation of the open space deficit. It says that following the boundary changes to Winchester wards in 2006, the population of St Bartholomew's ward has increased, leading to a corresponding decrease in the adequacy of open space when assessed against the council's open space standard. Many parts of the ward, however, still enjoy good access to the council's park and recreational ground area at North Walls and Winnell Moors Nature Reserve. So that's what the assessment says. So that is the sort of that's the things to consider in weighing the importance of the loss of the site. On the further page, which one is it? It explains what matters about informal space. So that's what we should follow in terms of considering the importance of this site. And it just describes the nature of the informality of it, which is, I just think that's useful to inform yourselves about in making a decision. So it talks about that they vary in size, they're likely to have various characteristics, generally mown to grass, not formally laid out, maybe surrounded by trees. There could be infrastructure like bins and benches. But the advantage of this type of open space is that it can serve a variety of functions. Some areas will be used for informal recreation activities like kickabout or dog walking. I won't go on, but I just wanted you to be informed about the strategy and the specifics of that in weighing up. So it's not saying it's critical to protect it. It's saying it in a different context. And then finally, yes, linking back to the policy, just to clarify the legal point that Dan had clarified earlier, CP7, the benefit of development to the community outweighs the harm caused by the loss of facility. So that was one of our original policies about open space. So there is a balancing act. The more up-to-date policy looks at providing alternative amenity where it's lost. So you've got those two elements there. Thank you, Chair.
Could I just clarify? There are quite a lot of areas that are not built on in the proposal. Are those effectively going to be small now areas of public space around the new development? Can we look at is that meadowland and so on?
It won't be in private curtilage. It will still be Winchester City Council land. It's designated for ecological enhancements, but unless we put a restriction on it saying it's not private or that it should be open, really I would say that it would still be public, but that's something for the council to consider further. I think in terms of the new homes team, from the planning perspective, sometimes we require public access through a site, but it is already open and public. We're considering it in terms of ecology space rather than any informal space put back there. There isn't really. It would be visual space with ecology enhancements and for the purpose of that rather than any informal play.
And what is the management of this space? How is it going to be maintained?
The mechanism through planning, we've got a condition on there. Kat would say the number of that one. And what that does, it just says, please tell us your management arrangements. And what we would expect is a drawing that shows everything outside of the garden areas defined, and then what the arrangements are that put in place. And that's not a legal mechanism for it. That's just making sure that we know it's going to be managed, so we can see how that is done.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Ashwell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just looking at the two houses on the right-hand side. So I don't know the plot numbers. 7, 8 possibly. I'm just looking at the car parking spaces. Are they? If I look at the plan here, it looks like they go onto the main road. Is there off-street parking as well there?
Thank you, Chair. The spaces for plots 7 and 8 are accessed by separate access from sorry, from Francis Gardens. So there's the main access, which I'll just bring up. There's the main access, which is here on Francis Gardens. I'll zoom in. Oops, sorry. Technology. Right. So here's the main access, which will serve properties 1 to 6. Here, properties 7 and 8, and there's a separate access which leads straight onto a parking space for each property. And then so that's where that particular part of the site differs to the rest of the site, which has a more sort of communal parking area. I hope that helps. Yeah.
Okay, I think have we all asked all the questions we need to? Councillor Lee, your last chance.
Sorry, I should have asked this question maybe of the architect. The roadway is going to be, no doubt, hard material. Is there any way that we can condition the roadway to be something that is not hard material, i.e. more
You mean permeable?
suds but green rather than just suds, if you see what I mean? There are techniques for that.
Thank you, Chair. Under the landscaping condition, which is number 6 and on page 25 and 26, we do require information about all hard landscaping, which includes some materials. We would normally require materials to either be permeable, or if they are impermeable, to be able to drain away naturally any surface water. So that is something that we can control under that condition, and we can control it to make sure that it's an appropriate surfacing, so that surface water is not draining from the site into the storm drains onto Francis Gardens. Thank you.
So actually, I'm not talking just about the management of water. I'm talking about actually the planting in the suds. You can have what I call a green effect, i.e. vegetation. In other words, it then is manifestly adding to the cooling effect, as well as obviously helping drainage.
Thank you, Chair. Again, the soft landscaping details would need to be submitted. I don't know, what if the level of planting helps with cooling of the site in general, or as a wider sort of climate concern. But the condition is a standard condition. Obviously, we've got some biodiversity net gains. So that part of that will be in the way of native species planting, which provides benefit to wildlife and insects. But as to the effect of the proposed planting on sort of future cooling of the area or the site, I'm afraid I don't know what nature that would take. Thank you.
I believe there's quite a lot of extra planting in the landscape plan. That's what we were looking at earlier, particularly of trees and hedges, which of course aren't there at the moment because it's just grass. But that's up to your judgment, Councillor Lee. Right, talking of which, we now move to debate. So members, who would like to start? Councillor Laming.
Thank you, Chair. On the surface, this is a very well designed development. I think the housing standards are very good, and I like the layout. Unfortunately, the stumbling block for me is the loss of open space. And we need to protect our open space a lot. I think the idea of people being able to walk, children being able to walk down to North Walls is a fallacy. I wouldn't want my children walking down there because of the way the route goes on their own. And I think that this will change the whole character of the estate, and I cannot go along with this one. I'm sorry, but we really need social housing, but I cannot support this.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. A very difficult decision, but I'm going to remove the emotion from it and stick to the material planning considerations. Specifically, I want to refer back to policy CP7, where in the preamble, paragraph 7.47 says, given existing shortfalls in provision and to achieve the required improvements, it is important that all existing facilities are retained. Therefore, all current open space areas and built sports facilities will be protected against development for other uses unless improvements can be achieved by relocating them. Now then, looking at policy Win 10 from the local plan, I can see that part 2 of that policy, exploring the potential to improve recreation and green space opportunities, has been achieved. However, part 1, the improved area of the local space itself, I just can't see, on balance, being able to support this application based on those 2 policies.
Right. Councillor Cunningham.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. For me, this is a very difficult, balanced judgment call. Policy GM5 and CP7 ask, is the harm caused by the loss of this 0.4 of a hectare of well-used public open space outweighed by the community benefits of the supply of 8 affordable homes and the replacement by equivalent or better provision in terms of quantity and quality in a suitable location? Other pre-existing and distant open spaces do not count towards this loss. Discounting previous mitigations in Hillier Way and Francis Gardens relating to other prior developments, I do not accept that this hurdle has been overcome by the supply of a connecting footpath, an improved pathways, and a trim trail. I will not be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say congratulations first? There's a proposed landscaping plan, something that I've been on about for many times. Whilst it's there, I think you need a microscope to actually read it. So it doesn't quite fulfill what I was looking for. However, in that concern, open space is precious wherever you are. I have an authority very close to where I reside that builds on every piece of open land it can get, and then suddenly thinks, we need open space. And what happens? They come to the neighbouring authority, which is Winchester in this case, and say, we would like open space. And they got open space on Winchester land and then immediately changed the boundaries. Yes, open space is crucial. The NPPF, I think, is something that we've been explained to us by Daniel today that we've got to take some notice of. It worries me a little because my particular patch has 17.5 acres of lost space. It doesn't have it and hasn't had it, even with all the development we've had within the boundaries of Denmead. No additional space has come with it to compensate the lack of space that is required. A question was asked about the remaining areas of land that will be left open. Whilst they will probably look very nice, I think for an informal play, they are potentially quite dangerous because they're on the extremities of the parcel of land. They are on corners, immediately adjacent to roads, which lends themselves to a health and safety issue. So that would not be appropriate. Bins are important, as already stated, I think by Councillor Lee. We currently have 4 bins. We are going to have the possibility in the not too distant future of 6 bins. And if we go like, I think it's Newcastle, they've got 10 bins. So bins are an important element in any planning application. And this is the first time that a cul-de-sac has been presented plan without a bin storage area where they can be picked up. So it does worry me a little. The entrance to this particular site from the road is very close to a corner, a T-junction. So a large freighter waiting there to empty, as we said, some 16 bins per trip. And that's based on what the bins we've got at the moment. If they go up, then that could be even more. So I'm having difficulty with this particular application. I can see the advantages, and it is quite true. The homeless would like to have a good home. But I think to sacrifice other people's amenities areas in order to cover that is not the right way around it. I'm at this point in time finding it difficult to go along with the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Gordon-Smith.
Thank you. Yeah, this is a very tricky one, and it was very adequately summarised by Councillor Tippett Cooper. And obviously, the impact on the people immediately around it is pretty severe. But against that is the pressing need for more housing. We say there's a housing crisis. It's 8 units coming in there. It's not a great amount, but all these additional sites count towards the 1,000 houses. And of course, the community benefit for the people nearby is obviously damaged. But if you look at the community wider across the city, there is an advantage for providing good quality housing. Councillor Lee said, you know, that the National Health Service recognises the value to mental health of having open space. I think we can all recognise that. But there's obviously also the mental health benefit of having adequate housing on a long-term lease rather than renting private properties, which can change. So I think in face of the pressing need for housing in the city, I'm prepared to support this.
Councillor Lee.
Yes, as other councillors have already said, I'm totally conflicted. We do need more affordable homes. There's no doubt about that. But I think, as Councillor Reid has pointed out, and I've said, losing open space, once it's gone, it's gone. And I think, you know, in the face of our climate and nature emergency, we do need to retain green space. And I understand the advice from the officers about the material weight in terms of the NPPF, our plans and so on. But I think on the balance of loss of well-being to the existing residents, I just think this is perhaps the wrong affordable homes in the wrong solution, the wrong location, and therefore I feel I can't support this application.
Well, if I could make my contribution as a member of the committee. We do need affordable homes. We do need open space, and we have a very difficult decision to make here. But I can't help thinking that the children who currently occasionally play on this space may well look back in the future and be grateful to those councillors who made the very difficult decision to allow homes to be built on this site so that they could have access to affordable, safe, warm homes in the future, and not the sort of chaos that so many people live in private accommodation they can't afford and so on. We all know we have We all know people in our own wards who are desperate for council homes. And in the area, there is plenty of other open green space for playing, for kicking a ball. It's a bit further away. It's not, you know, within sight of these homes that overlook this current green space. So the parents will have to go, or, you know, you'll have to be older. But, you know, it's a very, very difficult consideration. The mental health of the 8 families that you can put into new homes will be transformed. The mental health of the families who live immediately around this space might be slightly impinged, but they can go down the hill a bit to the park. It's not very far, just at the end of Francis Gardens or just down to the Nuns River. So I will be voting with the officer recommendation, but I totally respect those who will be going the other way. Right, Councillor Ashwell, did you want to contribute? Anybody else, Councillor Small?
I think, as other councillors have indicated, it's, you know, it's a very difficult decision. Yes, we need more affordable housing. Yes, we want to keep our open space. It's just finding the right balance, making that correct decision. It's certainly not easy.
Okay, we'll have a final contribution from our planning officer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. In making your decision, I've set out some more of the facts to inform yourself about the weight that you can attach to the open space policies, but I haven't actually done that in terms of the new homes policies or the new homes policies that affect the new homes team and the applicant. Page 17, the last paragraph, is really crucial, because what it says about the need is we originally looked at the first policy, which identifies the need for about 37 new houses in this area. That's actually gone up with the publication and the analysis through Abbots Barton framework, which is now looking at something like 50, of which 13 have been constructed, and that's all that's been delivered so far. And Win 10 picks up on that Abbots Barton framework as well. What it's basically saying is that this is the only site within that area covered by the Abbots Barton framework for new homes and affordable housing. There are no other places that we can put new homes. And so if you were to outweigh the affordable housing issue, what you would be saying is that we will not be delivering any more new homes in this area in accordance with the Abbots Barton framework, because the loss of the amenity is more important. So that's what your decision would look like, and that's what I want you to consider again in those two balancing issues.
Point of order, Chairman.
Yes,
The normal procedure is questions are asked by councillors.
Thank you.
The decision is made.
It is at the discretion of the chair, and I enabled the officer to make a summary. It's entirely up to you to make up your own decision on this application. Thank you.
I just wanted to give both issues the informed facts for you before you make your decision. Thank you.
Is there any more debate, members? We are sufficiently informed. Thank you very much to the officers. We will now make the decision. Can I see all those in favour of the officer recommendation to permit this application? 3, Chair. And those against?
5, Chair.
6, I believe.
Chair, sorry.
So that motion falls. We now put the motion. We need to agree some planning reasons for our decision, and then I will put the motion again. You would like to, sorry, I'm sorry, go and carry. I was going to invite members to propose policies that we can use for a decision to support that decision. Councillor Williams.
I think policy CP7 is the strongest argument that I think many members have shared in the loss of the open space. So I would propose that.
GM5 as well.
Thank you. Any other suggestions? Officers?
Chair, we have a draft of a potential reason for refusal, but we would also ask that to be delegated to us should members choose to support that motion. It would read: the proposed development is not considered to accord with policy DM5 and CP7 in that the loss of the informal open space without appropriate mitigation in the St Bartholomew's ward is outweighed by the community benefit, is not outweighed by the community benefit of the new affordable housing. There was some mention of health and loss of well-being, which we can use as sort of section of the MPPF, which is relevant, is should you choose to do that and add that in also.
I think that would be relevant. Thank you very much. So on the basis of what Lorna has just read out as our reason for refusal. Oh, Councillor Reid, sorry.
A tag to that, should there be in parentheses the fact that there is a recorded deficit in the locality of 2.83 hectares? That would explain the reason.
We'll see if that's appropriate to add to the motion. Thank you.
Yes, Chair, it is. We'll add that into the refusal reason as well.
Okay, so can I see all those in favour of refusing the application for those reasons as aforementioned? That's 6.
Yes,
and
6, Chair.
those against?
3.
Okay, thank you very much. So that application falls. We now take a 15-minute break for some coffee. Sorry about those who are waiting for the next item. We will come back at 11:20. Thank you. Thank you very much, everybody. So we now move to the next item on this morning's agenda, item number 7, which is at 3 Linden Close, Waltham Chase, in Hampshire. And our officer presenting is Marge Ballinger. Morning, Marge. And if you'd like to give us your presentation, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. First, I'd like to point out a couple of items on the update sheet just to highlight that there have been an additional representation submitted this week and they're public on the website. We also have received a follow-up consultation from our drainage engineer, and that's also been made public. And the engineer confirmed the previous comment referenced in the use of the potential soakaway for surface frontage drainage. The further information requested at the time is that there was a lack of detail of the soakaway. However, the site has proposed to use an existing surface water drainage system for the property. And this is not a new connection, but no further increase of the load to the system as it replaces existing hard standing. But the drainage engineer is satisfied with this option to connect to the existing system. Also on the update sheet is a correction to the number of homes using the shared drive, as there are 4 dwellings, and this will be noted within the presentation. And where the star is the proposal site. It is east of Winchester Road in Waltham Chase. The site is in flood zone 1 and is not identified within the Environment Agency's surface water flood maps to be an area of concern. There are no protected trees, right-of-way, or any other constraints for consideration. This is a larger image of the site outlined in red. The dwelling is L-shaped and it has a garage structure perpendicular to the main part of the dwelling. There is a small north garden on the north side of the dwelling and a larger garden on the west side of the dwelling outside of the conservatory shown in this picture. There is a single access into the site shared with the other owners of the dwellings located east, numbers 4 through 6. So these dwellings here, 4, 5, and 6. This is the site plan showing the location of the proposed building, and it's actually retrospectively built, but not quite finished into this part of the garden. This part of the garden is outside of the public views from Linden Close. These are the elevations showing that the garden building will be 4.3 meters across, 3.4 meters in depth, and up to under 2.5 meters. The ground slopes as shown here in some of the section drawings, so that the height differential is following the slope of the land. The building will be clad in a natural timber wood and have a standard flat rubber roof. The plans here show that the building is to be for a home office, and a section of the building is used to house the electrics and for overall garden storage. The building is in close proximity to the garage of the dwelling for easy access and will remain incidental to the dwelling. The building is approximately 1.8 meters from the fence line and will have a drain pipe to connect into the existing surface water drainage system that the dwelling utilizes. And these are photos from the more public areas off of Linden Close back toward the proposal site shown here. As you can see, the building is outside the public views. Photo 2 shows the other dwellings that have access and the relevant hard standing that is toward the front of the dwellings. And you can see dwellings 3, 4, and part of 5 in this photo. Sorry, 4, 5, and 6 in this photo. The proposal site is 3, and it's shown on the photo 1 on the top. These are photos showing from the marketing package of number 3 Linden Close of the proposal site. In 2012, there was existing hard standing, which looks like to be a combination of block paving and various landscape features. Photo 2 is the view of, photo 4 it's partially built outbuilding in its position. This is the front elevation. And photo 5 shows that the building was placed within the previous hard standing, although some of the hard standing was replaced with foundations for the building as shown in this photo. Photo 6 shows that the internal space as it is currently, building works have stopped for planning permission. This is where the home office is to be. And photo 7 shows where the garden store and the portion of where the electrics are to be housed. And photo 8 demonstrates the gap behind the building toward the fence. And this photo shows that there is an existing inspection chamber for the surface water drainage system within the site and its proximity to where the building is to be finished. The dwelling has a similar downpipe, also accessing the system shown in this photo. Again, this is not a new connection, but access into an existing privately owned connection that will eventually drain into the sewer and the road. It's using an existing surface water drainage system within the site to the satisfaction of the WCC drainage engineers consultation. And it's worth noting perhaps that the site also is known to have a separate surface water drainage system as well as a separate wastewater drainage system if that's a concern. And these are photos from the adjacent neighbor number 4, and this is to assess some of the objectives raised. Photo 10 was taken from just inside the rear patio area on a morning site visit. The building is approximately shown here to be 80 centimeters above the fence. And the more primary amenity spaces to a dwelling are known to be closer to the dwelling, but as you can see in photo 11, there is a separate seating area along the east side of the garden. So a further photo was taken from photo 12 showing standing in that area back toward the fence line. And these photos are taken from the garden of the house further on east, number 5. This is the view of the garden looking west through the garden of number 4 back toward the proposal site. And photo 14 shows the pathway that was flooded on a particular day in August between the boundaries shared with number 4. And number 15 just shows a demonstration of where the houses are in proximity to the building. To conclude, the outbuilding is not considered to have a detrimental impact on the host dwelling, on the character appearance of the area, and not considered to have an adverse impact on residential amenities of the local residences. And therefore, the proposal is considered to be acceptable to policy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Ballinger. We now turn to public speaking, and we have 2 objectors, Andrew Burgess and Kevin Joyce. Mr. Burgess and Mr. Joyce, if you'd like to come forward now, please. Thank you. You will have 3 minutes shared between you, and the timer will start when you start speaking. I assume that you've agreed between you how you're going to share the time. Lovely. Well, welcome, and take your time, and when you're ready. Thank you.
Good morning, councillors. Kevin Joyce, 5 Linden Close. In reference to my letter of the 14th of October, I contest the planning officer's recommendation and specifically condition 2 of the proposed consent, which is unenforceable without collective agreement from adjoining homeowners. For the planning officer, I ask, were you able to verify the completeness and accuracy of applicant information supplied? I recall a discussion with you on this on the 30th of August. For the drainage engineer, I ask, why did you issue final comments to the planning officer just hours before she issued her report and without response to drainage issues I raised on the 28th of September? And for the applicant, did you declare our private drive an unadopted drain? Why did you not evidence drain adequacy, given you intend to increase water flow by an estimated 43% over design intent? And why have you issued inaccurate information on soakaways, on sun positions, and on building control advice? Next slide, please. And as we await your consideration of the alternative location proposal offered by Mr. Burgess on the 28th of September, perhaps now is your opportunity. I urge the committee to reject this misleading application and encourage the applicant to consider this more neighbourly proposition.
There were planning reasons for removing permitted development rights in 1987. The layout of the houses, as you can see, is juxtaposed in a creative site layout. Any new development must be very carefully positioned to respect existing relationships. This proposal fails to do that. The half-built building, when viewed from our garden, is overbearing and blocks the view of the sky. It is unduly visually prominent. The side window results in light pollution and overlooking into our kitchen. We now suffer considerable loss of sunlight in our north-facing garden. The building is in the wrong location. An alternative proposal relocating the building to a more neighbourly position